Today we're going to take a moment to talk over a skill that you will use all throughout your ROTC career, and that is small unit tactics. Within a formation, there are a few different roles that you could have. The first being formation member. Everyone in a formation is a formation member, regardless of whether or not you have another role. But depending on the context in which these small unit tactics are being employed, each dot in the diagrams we're going to show you could represent something different. It could be an individual, a vehicle, or a flight, all dependent on scale. Now, every member of the formation is responsible for surveying the ground around them, the horizon, and the sky, within a certain range in front of them. Now, the idea is that at any given moment, all sides of the formation are being surveyed. This range could be directed to the front, to the rear, or to the flank, so it's not necessarily always going to be in the direction of travel. Another formation member, which you'll see, is the point. This is the person at the foremost of the formation in the direction of travel. While they're leading, they're not necessarily the person in charge. Generally, this member is going to have the heaviest firepower. They are also the first one in the line of fire. Generally, right behind them, you'll have your team lead. Now, this is the member who is in command. While they have to be up front, close to the action, and seeing everything as it unfolds, we can't have them in the absolute front, because if we lose our team lead, the mission can become chaotic. On the other side of our formation, we'll have the rear security, which is pretty self-explanatory as jobs go. They're the member who's monitoring risks from behind the formation. Next, let's look at the different formations that are generally used. First is line. Line is used for rapid movement when time is limited, to sweep or search areas like for a missing person search, or when no enemy contact is expected. This is because the flank security, or the sides, is pretty weak. When you're trying to communicate to your flight what formation you need them in, there are arm signals that you're going to use, because A, it may not be safe to be yelling things out, and B, everyone still may not be able to hear you in that situation. So there's generally two hand signals that can be used for each, the official one and kind of a shorthand, which might be used if you're in a more closed space and your formation is closer together. These hand signals are going to be shown in the top right of the screen, first showing the long form version, followed by the shorthand. Next we have file, sometimes referred to as column. This is used when there's limited visibility during road marches or some context where you're in a defined path that is already linear. When you're passing through restrictive terrain, so you have to go single file, it's used in this context because it simplifies control and it has decently good security. And another advantage of file is that it can deploy rapidly into other formations, which you'll see more of as we move on. Once again, the hand signals will be shown in the top right. Next we have echelon. Echelon is effectively a diagonal version of file formation. And similar, it provides good flexibility and speed, and transition easily into other formations, and it provides good coverage of an area for sweeping or searching for specific things. Some of its downsides are that it has insufficient security if enemy contact is possible or expected. And you're going to be using this in situations where the risk is low. Now, once again, let's take a moment to look at these hand signals. Next, we'll have wedge. Wedge is used when enemy contact is possible. It facilitates strong command and control, meaning that you can communicate with your group well and direct them relatively easily, and it has strong security. Another reason why wedge is preferable when you're in situations where you know you're in enemy territory, for example. There are times, though, when your wedge formation is going to be uneven. So, for example, if you only have 4 people, one of the tails is going to be longer. For the hand signals, whichever side you want to be longer, you're going to stick out that arm, as seen above. If using the shorthand version, the same will be done with kind of like a surf's up hand, just to whichever side you want the longer tail on. If you have an odd number of people, either side will work. So now let's take a look at V. This one is kind of a good in-between of wedge formation and file formation. It's used when contact is possible, but speed is desirable. It has an in-between of good security and good command and control, similar to wedge, but you're able to move a little more quickly. Last formation we're going to look at today is diamond. Now, diamond has good security on all sides, and it can change direction really easily. This is an example of a formation that's easy to swap in and out of from file or echelon. As a general rule, when you're in any of these formations, you're going to want to keep 5 to 10 yards in between your formation members. They look really close in these diagrams, but generally they're spread out over large open areas or wooded areas, which is why the communication elements are so important. Now, this can change depending on if it's daytime or nighttime or if you're in a confined space, but 5 to 10 yards is the default spacing. Now, another thing to consider, we showed you all the hand signals for these formations, but there is an abundance of hand signals that you can use to communicate different things in small unit tactics. And there are a lot of them. We're going to show you kind of an abridged list today of just what you're probably going to encounter in the operations you do within ROTC. So, this would include halt, freeze, rally or huddle up, take cover, radio or phone operator forward, head count, or disperse. When you're in formation, there are a few different types of movement that you can use. Now, traveling is used as a general term to mean just moving, walking forward in your formation. There's also bounding, which is a type of movement that you use when you're under enemy fire or you need more protection. There are 2 types of bounding. There's alternating, where you start 2 formation members next to each other. When they're ready to move, they'll say, I'm up, pop up, say, I'm moving, move rapidly towards the next available piece of cover that they see. When you reach it, you will take cover, make sure your weapon is in a position where you can cover for the next person, and say, set. The person who was covering you before will now say, I'm up, move to the next piece of cover parallel with the first person's current position, preferably a different piece of cover than they are using, just a recommendation. While they are doing this, they will say, I'm moving, then down, and set, and the process will repeat from there. The other type of bounding is successive bounding, and the procedures to do it are very similar to alternating. The difference being that the first person will go through the steps of saying, I'm up, I'm moving, I'm set. And the second person will bound to a piece of cover that is not parallel to them, but past them. So that you're basically like leapfrogging each other. So it's not quite as secure, but you can cover more ground in a shorter period of time. Now, once again, these are just the very basics of small unit tactics. Here are some sources that I referenced, but there are a ton of pieces of literature that you can reference, including the field training manual. So this is a skill that you will implement throughout the rest of your ROTC career. Thanks again for watching, and go kick some butt.